The first Sunday of January, 1986. Los Angeles. Gene Wilder is driving to a tennis game. His wife is in the seat beside him. She is 40 years old. She is one of the most beloved comedians in America. And she has just said something strange. She says she can't keep her eyes open. She describes it as a fog rolling in. Over the next 10 months, doctors will tell her it is a virus. Then that it is depression. Then that it is nothing more serious than a stomach complaint, and hand her something from a pharmacy shelf. It is stage 4 ovarian cancer. By the time anyone says those words out loud, the 10 months are gone. And so is the chance. What Gene Wilder did after that is the part almost nobody knows. He spent the next 25 years on it. He never made a film about it. He rarely gave interviews about it. And then, at the very end of his own life, he made a decision that looks like the exact opposite of everything he had fought for. He was given a diagnosis of his own, and he told no one, not the public, not his fans, not the children who still stopped him in restaurants. Tonight, we're going to tell you why, and why it was not the contradiction it appears to be. To understand the man in that car, you have to go back 45 years to a house in Milwaukee. His name was not Gene Wilder yet. It was Jerome Silberman, Jerry. His father made and sold novelty items. His mother, Joan, had rheumatic heart disease. He was 8 years old the first time she had a heart attack. When she came home from the hospital, the doctor came to check on her. And on his way out, he took the boy by the arm, leaned down and said something that would organize the rest of his life. "Don't ever argue with your mother," he said. "You might kill her." And then, almost as an afterthought, he added, "Try to make her laugh. Think about what that does to an 8-year-old. He now believed two things at once: that a wrong word from him could end his mother's life, and that a laugh from her was somehow medicine. So he started performing. He did accents. He did voices. He worked at it the way a child works at something that feels like a life or death responsibility, because to him it was. He said later that this was the first time he ever consciously tried to make another person laugh, and that when it worked, when she laughed hard enough to scold him for it, he learned something he carried for 60 years. That he could do this, that it mattered. Every performance he ever gave, the panicked accountant, the mad scientist, the man in the purple coat with a golden ticket, started in that hallway, with a boy who had been told that laughter was the only safe thing he had to offer. Hold on to that. It explains everything that happens at the end of this story. He met her on a film set in 1982. He said the day they met felt like bumping into an old friend. Gilda Radner had been the first performer ever cast on Saturday Night Live. Millions of Americans had spent their Saturday nights with her characters. In 1984, she and Gene Wilder were married in France. They had about 18 months of ordinary happiness. Then came that Sunday in the car. What follows is not a mystery. It is a sequence of appointments. She goes to a doctor. She is exhausted. She is in pain. Her stomach is swollen. She is told it is a virus, and to rest. She rests. She gets worse. She goes back. She is told it is depression. She is told she is under stress, that she has been through a lot, that this is what stress does to a body. She goes to another. She is told it is a digestive problem and sent home with something to take for it. 10 months. Doctor after doctor, and not one of them finds it. And here is the detail that Gene Wilder would spend the rest of his life unable to let go of. Gilda's grandmother had died of ovarian cancer. So had her aunt. So had her cousin. Nobody asked. In all those appointments, across all those months, Not one doctor asked her whether the disease ran in her family. Neither she nor her husband knew that it mattered. Nobody told them. There was also a blood test, a simple one, available at the time. Had it been done in the first weeks instead of the 10th month, the story might have a different ending. It was not done. October 1986. She finally has a name for it. Stage 4, ovarian cancer. And there is something strange that people who have been through this will recognize immediately. When the diagnosis finally came, Gilda Radner felt relief. After 10 months of being told the pain was in her head, someone had finally said, "You were right. Something is wrong." Then the doctors took her husband aside, out of the room, and told him what they thought her chances were. They were not good. He was told in plain language that she did not have much of one. He never told her. He carried that sentence by himself for 2.5 years. Through the surgery, through the chemotherapy, through the months when the cancer went quiet and they let themselves believe it had gone. He was 53 years old, and he was doing exactly what the doctor in Milwaukee had told him to do when he was 8. Protect her. Don't say the thing that would hurt. Make her laugh. And she laughed. That was the extraordinary thing about her. She wrote a book during her treatment and made it funny. She said she didn't want to be a tragedy. She was a comedian, and she intended to stay one. For a while, it looked like she might win. Then, in the spring of 1989, it came back. She was admitted to a hospital in Los Angeles in the middle of May 1989. She died on the 20th. She was 42 years old. Her husband was beside her. That evening in New York, Steve Martin was in a studio getting ready to host Saturday Night Live, the show she had helped begin. When the news reached him, he put aside what he had planned to say. Instead, they played a piece of old footage of the two of them dancing together from years before, when everyone was young and nobody knew anything. He barely got through the introduction. That is how America said goodbye to her. Gene Wilder said goodbye differently. He would later write that in the weeks after she died, he found himself shouting at the walls of his own house. Not from grief exactly, from something underneath the grief, because he had started reading. He wrote to cancer specialists across the country. He read everything he could find about the disease that had taken her. He wanted to understand what had happened and how it had been allowed to happen, and what he found made him angrier than anything in his life. And at the end of it, he arrived at a conclusion he would repeat for the next quarter of a century in 5 plain words. Gilda didn't have to die. Now think about who this man was. He was a private person, almost pathologically so. He hated publicity, avoided the industry circuit, and had spent his career insisting that he was not a comedian at all, that he was an actor who happened to be funny. A man like that grieves quietly. He goes to the country house. He stops answering the phone. Instead, in the spring of 1991, Gene Wilder walked into a hearing room in Washington and sat down in front of a congressional subcommittee. He was not there to be a celebrity. He was there to describe, in front of lawmakers and a room of strangers, exactly what had happened to his wife. He told them about the 10 months. He told them about the family history that nobody had asked about. He told them about the blood test that could have been done in January and was not done until October. He said afterwards that he had not been sure it would make any difference. He did it anyway because there were other women out there who still had time. That same year, he wrote about her death for a magazine, the first time he had spoken about it publicly at length. He was 58 years old, and he had just begun the second career of his life, the one with no scripts, no premieres, and no reviews. Almost nobody watching his films today knows this part, and he was only getting started. During her treatment, Gilda had found something that helped more than she expected. Not a drug, a room. She had joined a support group in Santa Monica. Ordinary people with cancer, sitting together, talking. She said it gave her the strength that medicine alone had not, and she thought there should be places like it everywhere. She died before she could build one, so her husband built it. He worked with her therapist and with friends, and in 1995, the first one opened in New York City, in a red townhouse on the corner of Houston Street. They called it Gilda's Club. It was not a hospital and not a clinic. It was a house with a kitchen and sofas and a room where children could go while their parents talked. Anyone touched by cancer could walk in. There was no fee. Others followed. Then more. Then chapters across the country and beyond. He also helped establish a detection center for the disease in Los Angeles and lent her name to a research registry that gathers families in which ovarian cancer runs, the exact family history that nobody had thought to ask her about. That registry now holds well over 1,000 families. In 2005, he came into New York for an opening that was not a film premiere. The city renamed a stretch of West Houston Street after her. He stood on the corner in the cold and watched them put up a sign with his wife's name on it. 16 years after her death, still working, and by then something had already gone wrong in his own body. In 2000, Gene Wilder was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin lymphoma. He went through treatment. It worked. He went into remission, and when he talked about it a few years later, he was strikingly calm about the whole thing. He said he had had a very good life and a very good career, and that he had no regrets. He remarried in 1991 to a woman named Karen. He acted less and less. He wrote books instead, a memoir, then novels. He painted with watercolors. He watched old westerns in the afternoons. He went out to dinner, and in restaurants, something kept happening. Children recognized him, not from the films his own generation remembered, from one film made in 1971 that had not even done well when it came out and had since become something children found on their own, generation after generation. A man in a purple coat at the gate of a chocolate factory. 40 years on, small children in family restaurants would look up and light up and say it out loud. There's Willy Wonka. Then, around 2013, he was given a second diagnosis, Alzheimer's disease. He was 80 years old. He talked it over with his family, and he made a decision that on the surface is very hard to square with the previous 24 years of his life. He decided that nobody outside that room would be told. Think about how strange that looks. This was the man who had testified before Congress because a diagnosis was found too late. The man who had spent a quarter of a century telling people that silence about illness costs lives. The man whose entire second career was built on the sentence, ask, test, say it out loud. And when it was his turn, he said nothing at all. His family explained it after he was gone, and the explanation is the whole story folding shut. It was not vanity. He was not hiding. It was those children in the restaurants. He knew that if the news were public, the moment would change. A child would still look up and smile and say, "There's Willy Wonka." And then a parent, gently, would lean down and explain that the man was sick, and the delight on that child's face would turn into worry or confusion or sadness. In his family's words, he simply couldn't bear the idea of one less smile in the world. Now go back to Milwaukee. 1941, a hallway, a sweating doctor, and an 8-year-old boy being told that the safest thing he can give the person he loves is laughter. He never stopped believing it. That is why he spent 25 years fighting, so that no other woman would be sent home with the wrong answer. And it is why, at the end, he protected a few thousand children he would never meet from a piece of information they did not need to carry. Both decisions came from exactly the same place. He died at his home in Connecticut in August 2016, at 83, with his family around him and an Ella Fitzgerald record playing. The disease, they said, had taken a great deal from him, but it never took his ability to recognize the people he loved, and it never touched who he was. Gilda's Club is still open. The registry still enrolls families. Somewhere today, a woman is asking her doctor a question she would not have known to ask because of 10 months in 1986. And somewhere, a child is watching a man in a purple coat and laughing with no idea what it costs to keep that laugh intact. So here is what we would like to ask you tonight. He spent his life believing that protecting someone and telling them the truth were the same thing, until the day they weren't. When it was his turn, he chose silence. Would you have done the same? Or would you have wanted the world to know? Tell us in the comments. We read every one of them. And if stories like this one matter to you, you can join us as a keeper of the light. You'll find the join button right below this video. However you choose to support us, thank you for being here with us.